Guys, welcome back to another Architectural Real Talk. So today's question is coming from an architectural student that's doing a master's degree program. And in his words, he feels defeated. So I wanted to explain to you, the first thing about juries is they're there for you to be able to communicate your ideas. If you're able to communicate your ideas to your colleagues, your peers, or your professor, people who are in the same field as you, you should be able to do that to a client, or you should be able to do that in the real world. Now, when it comes to how to perform really well in a jury, my methodology is that you should always rehearse internally. As you're coming up with process models, as you're coming up with drawings, sketches, you should constantly have a thing in the back of your mind. How is this coming together as a narrative? How is this coming together as a scheme? Now, as you're able to fulfill all the requirements that your professor put in for you, you want to be able to say, okay, I need an extra model. I need an extra technical drawing. I need an extra sketch. If that is necessary for you to communicate the entire idea across. The next thing I want you to do is, while you're in a jury, start becoming a sponge. Pretty much right after you have delivered your speech, which I personally disagree with, but right after you have sold your project or you have given your sales pitch, you should take out your notebook or sketchbook and start writing down any cohesive criticism or any feedback. The other thing I want to point out is this. As I'm giving you guys advice as students, I want you to understand that I was a student of architecture myself, and at the same time, as an educator, I'm on both sides of the coin. So I'm able to be a juror on some end, and I'm also been in juries. So I want to give feedback to both sides. And for the student side, I will continue to say this to you, that do not seek criticism of your work, be a criticism of yourself. Now, what that means is that even though your idea falls short, that doesn't mean just because you were able to fulfill all the requirements of the class and your idea still falls short. Still means you were able to perform the work. Don't ever see that as a failure on your part. Now, professors have tendency to not reward effort. They rather reward pretty much results. So in that circumstance, those professors pretty much need to understand that if you put in your fourth effort and you got a project that has fruition, you have a project that actually has work ethic being demonstrated there, more power to them to actually give you a good grade, regardless of the outcome of your project, because your good portfolio really matters for an employer. I want you to understand that you have to be able to take control of a jury. And what I mean by taking control of a jury is, if you see a juror that's just talking about the way a tree is represented on a drawing, and you really have a question about how does the flow work throughout your building, you need to be able to say, hey, that I understand that graphic might not be representing correctly. You guys all want to talk about it in a nice way, in a way you can swing around the conversation and just be like, I really have an issue with this particular part of my project. Can you tell me what I can do for this? Can you tell me how I can fix my flow? Does this make sense? Is this making sense? And when you start communicating questions to the jurors, they would gladly help. And that's the point of a juror to do. He needs to be able to give you insight or input that would result to you changing your project. Rather than you just remembering after jury, oh, I have to switch the entire project around, or I have to face it right, but you don't understand why it needs to be there, you got nothing from the jury. Lastly, I want you to understand is this. What constitutes as a good jury or a good critique? Critique, by definition, is criticism of your work. If a student walks up there and all the jurors did was, oh, that's a great project, great delivery, good job, I really like the way your building comes out, or this graphic's really nice, then you really did not have a good jury. You ended up walking away feeling like your ego's been boosted. Your project has no sense of direction now. That, to me, was actually a bad jury. If the student walks away with an understanding, oh, I have to fix this, fix that, I have to come up with new drawings, guess what? You just got your direction. You know what to do next, right? So don't see it as a break at all, especially mid-semester like this. The next thing I want you to understand is now I'm going to criticize the jurors, right? Oftentimes, jurors are there for themselves. I invite jurors that were my clients. I've invited jurors that were pretty much my colleagues. And sometimes the jurors come in with that logic that, hey, I'm going to try to impress either me or the other jurors on the faculty by saying ridiculous theory words. That's not what you're there for. If the student does not understand what you're saying, or you're not able to use the vernacular that he understands, then all of it is just a hodgepodge mess to him. The other thing I want you to understand is that inviting your colleagues or your former friends or any of those type of jurors, you run the risk of having what's called a mean juror. The logic of the mean juror is to just be like as condescending as possible to the student that have done least work. Rather, my approach is if a student does not have adequate work on the wall or it doesn't reflect the work like other people's work, then I simply just say, okay, we're going to go ahead and skip him or her. Now, that is out of respect for the other students, obviously. Now, when it comes to jurors' criticism, I pay particular attention to what kind of a juror I invite, again, based on what they say or how they interact with the students prior to the jury. So one of the things that I look for while they're in the jury is if they are giving feedback and not criticism. So if the juror is going, well, if it's not a mean juror that's just bashing the project, if he's saying, oh, I wish this was better, I wish your entry made more sense, that's great criticism, but where is the solution? Like, you are a person who are on the panel to give solutions. You're not going to come in here and tell me, oh, this tastes bad, or this does not look good. Oh, it doesn't flow well together with your project. Well, okay, how would it flow together with the project? Like, and if the juror is not willing to provide that information or is not going out of his way to actually give that to the student, then I might interject and say, how would you go about doing that? And just to see what their input is. And if they don't have it, if they just say, well, I wish it could work better, I wish this was more lined up, then it's not an adequate enough criticism for you to write down, right? So that's my take on jurors. So the jurors can't be there for themselves. They can't be coming in with that logic that they need to be beaten down or broken just to ascend, right? And then I want them to go through that level of not just providing criticism and actually provide feedback. Now, my opinion on juries in general is they serve better if they are desk critique, if they are gallery styled. And the reason being that when a student feels comfortable and the juror himself can just walk up and just informally say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about this? I'm trying to understand this drawing. You want a juror to be able to interact even in a gallery style setting. So the student himself is not nervously breaking down as he's like standing next to his project. And the whole idea behind the sales pitch is a handful of students will get to a point where they're selling their projects to a direct client or they're standing directly in front marketing. So if that is the case, then shouldn't we be making the students pretty much be able to defend their work or be able to communicate their idea rather than giving a whole sales pitch? And that is my concept. That's my take on it. So hopefully this will help you out in your future juryman. Hopefully it gets easier. And again, thank you for all the support and all the love. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. Follow for more content.